Hello, Tracy. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
Glad to see you back this week. If you don't mind, first I'd like to start off our session by just checking in like usual and seeing how things have been for you since we met last week. You were still feeling kind of anxious and worried and nervous about your practicum, so I'm interested to hear how the past week's been.
Well, it's been interesting. I had interviewed for a position in a different part of the company, which would be a transfer.
Okay.
And Monday, they actually offered me a position, which would work amazingly well for my practicum. So I have accepted the position. So I've got that figured out. So that has alleviated almost all of that stress. I feel like I can breathe now.
That's wonderful.
Now I have a new problem.
You must be a little bit, at least some weight off your shoulders, maybe?
Absolutely. With it being an internal transfer now, I'm being told that they're not sure when they're going to be able to transfer me because they don't have anybody to fill my position. So now my stress is the fact that I have a practicum all lined up and basically sitting there waiting for me, and I have to wait until they tell me I can go.
So, so we have a step in the right direction, but still some roadblocks, it sounds like.
Yes. So I'm stressing about the fact that they may not transfer me before the practicum starts. And so I'm either going to start it late or, worst case scenario, they would say they wouldn't be able to transfer me.
So I can understand that that might be somewhat frustrating for you.
Very frustrating.
So what you said you have a stress, but a new source of stress. So are you experiencing any other feelings about this new development?
Well, it sounds completely silly. I'm relieved that I have the practicum identified.
Good.
I, however, am now worried that while I have the source of my practicum found, that, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen to mess that up.
So maybe sounds like you're having some more of these thoughts that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. That's one of the automatic thoughts you identified last week. So I'm sensing a pattern. I'm seeing a pattern. It looks like maybe that thought's rearing its ugly head again.
If I'm not sure it's rearing its head again or if it's just still.
If it's just still there.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd like to follow up on that here in just a little bit, but we didn't really have any specific homework that I assigned last week. I know we spent the last part of our session kind of focusing on the worksheet that you and I completed. That was the evaluation of the rules and assumptions, and I had you rate each statement as far as how significantly it applied to you and the beliefs that you have about yourself. And then we kind of spent some time talking about a few of those statements. And so I want to follow up on that in a bit too. But right now I would kind of like to get some input from you as far as like what your thoughts and feelings are as far as our goals that we've talked about in the past, and then kind of what our agenda is going to look like today. So is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the two goals that you have identified in the past have been to figure out your practicum and to reduce some of the worry that related to that practicum. So have you identified any additional goals that you want to include, or have those goals changed at all, or what are your thoughts about that?
It would be nice to have more of a positive out, not feel like I'm always looking for the other shoe to drop, being able to look at things a little more positively. However, that has always been a struggle.
So do you think perhaps like increased positive thinking might be an appropriate goal?
Yeah, I'm going to say that would be nice to see the glass half full rather than half empty some days.
Okay. So yeah, some of your struggles that we talked about in the past has been anxiety, obviously, over the practicum, but some of the statements that you made last week um, lend some evidence towards some pessimism as well, like with the statements like what can go wrong will go wrong. I think that one of the other statements that you used last week was, if you expect the worst, you'll never be disappointed. So you kind of automatically take that kind of negative or pessimistic
Right.
frame of mind. And we've talked in the past about the CBT model, how thoughts kind of affect our behaviors and how we react to certain situations. So can you kind of see and kind of understand how those thoughts, always expecting the worst out of situations, might, or how it does affect like the thoughts that you have and the behaviors that you exhibit and the ways that you react to certain situations?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we can definitely spend some more time like focusing on that and working on having a glass that's half full instead of a glass that's half empty.
That would be a nice change.
So what's your priority right now as far as what you want on our agenda topic to be? Like in the past, it's been obviously on the practicum issue. You've made some progress in that regard, and that's wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that you have a plan in place and a transfer opportunity that you've been able to accept. So what do you want to focus on today?
Well, I'm going to say, as far as the transfer goes, it could take a month to 2 months to get that done, which is going to put me up against the start of the practicum deadline. So
Okay.
maybe keeping myself on the positive side of things rather than dwelling on the negative would be useful. I'm going to say that otherwise, to keep myself more in a positive frame of mind.
Okay. So thinking about, so while you're in the process of waiting for this transfer to take place, like maybe figuring out some ways that you can more positively think about the situation instead of assuming that just because there's a lull or a stall in regards to like the transfer can't happen immediately, that doesn't necessarily mean it won't happen at all. So is that something that you kind of want to spend some time?
Yes, I have learned that I'm not a very good person at being patient.
Okay. If you don't mind, let's go ahead and jump right into this transfer opportunity and why it may be stalled for now. So what you said, they didn't know for sure, your supervisory staff or your supervisor, whoever it is, doesn't know for sure like when you'll be able to transfer. Do you know what the reasoning is as to why that can't be an immediate thing?
Well, their reasoning right now is we had someone who quit and their last day was last week.
Okay.
So we're down a staff member. And so by my leaving, that puts them down 2 staff members. So being short-staffed would be their concern. However, they have just hired, like hasn't even started yet, someone to replace the gal that left last week. So it'll be a matter of getting someone hired then to train and replace me so that they can let me go.
Okay.
So it's waiting on staffing.
Waiting on staffing so that they can accommodate your transfer.
Right.
Okay. So you said that they just did hire somebody just recently to replace another worker who had left.
Right.
Okay. So, and how much time, before I take that any further, how much time do you have between now and when your practicum is supposed to start?
A month and a half.
A month and a half?
Well, let me see. January 1st is when it starts. So
okay, so you have 2.5 months.
Right, 2.5 months.
Because you have all of November and December.
Right.
Okay, so the person who just got hired, The individual who they replaced, when did that individual leave your agency? Do you know that?
When did they leave?
When did they end their employment?
Her last day was last Thursday, so a week ago.
So a week ago she left and they already have a new replacement?
Which is abnormal.
Abnormal, yeah. Okay. So a week turnaround is not normal for your agency?
No, it's usually months.
Oh, usually months. We have 2.5 months to get something worked out, and the last turnaround took a week. So that
well, I heard rumor that they're interviewing 3 people next week. So if all goes well and I were to be a positive person, I would be thinking that they would hire somebody then, and we could work on getting them trained and acclimated to what they need to do, which would allow me plenty of time to exit.
That's good, positive thought. So how much time usually elapses between interviews and when somebody gets hired, you know?
It varies. I'm gonna say we've had instances where they have interviewed, they had offered a position, they accepted the position, and then later turned it down because another job came along. We've had that, some where, they have to give 2-week notice. So it could be anywhere from an immediate start to a month or better.
On average, what do you think it is?
From the date they offer the position, probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. So we'll say worst case scenario, 3 weeks.
Right.
And then once an individual gets hired, how long does the training process take?
It depends on the individual, and their experience. If they're familiar with what we're doing, it goes a little quicker. If they're kind of new to the field, they train them a little bit longer. So it just depends on the individual.
Can you give me like a ballpark average maybe?
Oh, probably at least a month and a half.
Okay, so we'll say 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at things from a rather pessimistic perspective, thinking like the acceptance hiring process is going to take on the far end of 3 weeks time frame, and then the training process is going to take on the far end of the 6-week timeline. That gives us approximately 9 weeks. So right. just a little bit over 2 months from now.
Right.
And so even with looking at things from a fairly negative, this is the longest it could possibly probably take perspective, does that timetable 9 weeks from now still fit within your window of when you could successfully transfer and be on time for your practicum?
Yes, but yes, it does.
Okay. So does that change your thoughts at all, or have any impact on your thoughts as far as like being able to make this transfer work, knowing that even if it does take the longest we've seen it take, I'm still going to have like a week to spare?
Well, yeah. Right. And that's great. However, I'm going to say I still have, it's a matter of if the applicants that they interview accept the position. So if nobody accepts the position, then that all flies out the window.
Okay. Have you, how often would you say it occurs when they go through the interview process and they offer a position to somebody and they turn it
down? Probably about 30 to 40% of the time.
Okay, so 30 to 40% of the time they may not accept, but that still leaves 60 to 70% of the time that they do accept.
Yeah.
So would you say that the probability is higher that one of the new applicants will accept versus not accepting a position if offered?
I think the best positive that I get out of that is not so much percentage wise of who will or won't, is the fact that there's three of them.
Okay,
You
right.
know?
And so
So that
that
increases
lends,
the odds.
and because if that lends other options, like if maybe the number one pick, has that happened before, if maybe their number one choice doesn't accept, they still have, a second or third option that they can fall back on?
Right. I'm gonna say that seems to feel more comforting to me than looking, because, and that's assuming they make an offer. If they don't care for the individuals, they may not.
How many times would you say, like in a situation similar to this, when there's been an opening, and they've had multiple applicants, do they go through the whole interviewing process and don't feel comfortable recommending, or none of the people that they offer to accept? Has that ever happened, or how often would you say that happens?
It happens. I'm unsure of how often it happens because I don't, I'm not always aware of when they interview. So
Would you say um, it happens frequently or rarely?
um I think I'd say frequently. I mean,
Occasionally? You would say they frequently don't have anybody that they can offer a position to?
well, I mean, it maybe sometimes, not, it's not like a regular weekly, whatever occurrence, but it's, I don't know, if you were to percentage wise, it'd probably be probably about 40% again. It seems like there's a difficulty getting people employed and keeping them.
Okay. So what I've learned so far from you is that even worst case scenario, it's going to take 9 weeks, if we lean towards the negative end of the spectrum, to get somebody interviewed, offered a position, accepted, and trained, which leaves you with a couple weeks to spare. We discussed that um, most of the time, or the majority of the time, 60 to 70 versus 30 to 40, there is a reasonable candidate that they can offer the position to. And even if that first pick doesn't accept the position, we've discussed that a positive is that there are two other applicants who are potential hires.
Right.
We've also discussed that while it does occur sometimes or occasionally, the majority of the time you are able, or your agency is able, to go through that hiring process and successfully hire an individual more times than they find that they don't have a reasonable applicant.
Right.
So even looking at things from the most negative perspective that we can take, like this is going to take 9 weeks, and there's a 40% chance that the person might not accept it, and there's a 40% chance that they might not even be able to offer. Does that change your opinion at all about being able to transfer within an appropriate amount of time, knowing that even worst case scenario, I'm still going to have probably 2 weeks to spare? There's a 60 or 70% chance that they're going to be able to give the position to somebody, and a 60% chance that that person or another individual in the hiring pool is going to accept. Does that have any impact at all on your feelings about?
It helps, yeah.
It does. Okay. I think it would be beneficial to maybe not all the specific numbers of 60, 70, 50, 40%, but even to just keep in your mind, even worst case scenario, it's still probably going to work out. The odds are still in my favor, even worst case scenario. Do you think that might be helpful for you and might help you shift some of your thinking in a more positive manner as you can kind of continue to wait out this process?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, just that, you know, they do eventually get people hired. So yeah. And knowing that worst case scenario, there's still time to spare. Not much, not in my comfort zone, but still time. Yeah, it's doable.
Do you think that that's something that you can work to keep in mind over the next week or so until we meet again?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you can think of that you could do that might help you shift your thinking in a more positive direction?
I think just like we had said before, you know, I was able to get my first practicum and finish it successfully. And the fact that I have a specific practicum identified significantly increases the positive aspect of it. So, I mean, things continue to keep working out. So, you know, other than that, I mean,
So
keep
there's
looking.
no reason to think that they won't work out now?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said you said things have worked out for you in the past, so maybe there's no real reason for you to think that they won't work out now.
Right. If I can just keep reminding myself of that, then perhaps I can do that on a more regular basis.
Okay. Well, that can be a goal for the next week, and if it's helpful, like if you think you might struggle to remember to have those thoughts, you can always do some type of like prompt that you can place, like a sticky note or a colorful sticker or something on your computer screen or your calendar or your mirror at home to kind of help to remind you to, oh, hey, like, yeah, I have these thoughts, and this is the way I'm going to approach my thinking about this issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our time's pretty much up for today. So before we officially end, I just want to touch base with you and see like if you have any specific thoughts about the session, if there's anything that you particularly liked or disliked, or anything you want to see differently next time.
No, I think it's probably good and beneficial for me to start looking at the positive about things instead of concentrating on worrying so much.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you recognize the importance of having those positive thoughts and how those in turn will affect, you know, your reactions and the behaviors that you have in these situations. So if it's all right with you, we will plan to meet next week, same time, same place.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Well, you have a good week, Tracy.
All right, you too.
Thank you.